Hello, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending where you are. Welcome to Connect Africa, to our daily streaming session. Just this always happens to me. My YouTube channel was open. All right, then. Yeah. Today we are here. It's a special program today. We are going to have a conversation with His Excellency Ambassador David Comissiong. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you, Mahlet. It's a real pleasure to be with you again.
Thank you. Same here. So Ambassador David Comissiong, he's no stranger to Connect Africa. I think the last time we talked exactly for the same event around the summit or after the summit happened in 2021. So we are here again to talk about what are the progresses, what does it comprise, what has been, for the past 2 years so far, the journey of the Africa-Caricom cooperation between the two. So it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here. Let me introduce, before we jump into our discussion, I would like to introduce our guest tonight here. So His Excellency Ambassador David Comissiong is a former senator in the government of Barbados and is currently Barbados Ambassador to the Caribbean community, or as we know it, CARICOM, and to the Association of Caribbean States. He's also a founder member of the Caribbean Pan-African Network, the Clement Pine Movement of Barbados, the Caribbean chapter of the International Network in Defense of Humanity, and the Global African Congress. He was an architect and the first director of Barbados Government's Commission for Pan-African Affairs. Ambassador David represented the Caribbean region at the 7th Pan-African Congress in Uganda, that was in 1994, played a key role in the United Nations World Conference Against Racism in South Africa, and has represented also the diaspora on the African Union Economic, Social and Cultural Council, ECOSOC. So since the year 2012, Ambassador Comissiong has served as a member of Barbados National Task Force on Reparations. He is also the author of The Wide Straits of Tomorrow, Essays and Speeches, and it is the healing of the nation, the case for reparation, and the Pan-African love story of Arnon and Mignon, for which I have the pleasure to read. So very interesting. Welcome again, Ambassador. Let's start against what background. So tomorrow, September 7, is Africa-Caricom Day. So against what background this day was assigned to be, celebrated as Africa-Caricom Day? Is it celebrated only in the islands in the Caribbean or in Africa? Because we don't hear about that. Yeah.
Well, you would recall that on the 7th of September 2021, we held the first Africa-Caricom Heads of Government Summit. That was a very historic event because, we all know the history. During the colonial era, the nationalist activists from the Caribbean and from the continent of Africa collaborated in the decolonization struggle. The 5th Pan-African Congress in Manchester, England in 1945 is famous because that is where people like George Padmore and Kwame Nkrumah came together and they planned the decolonization struggle against the European powers. But after we became independent on the continent and in the Caribbean, and we established our own multilateral organizations such as the OAU and then African Union, in our case, CARIFTA and then CARICOM, we kind of went maybe our separate ways. We didn't come together as much as we should have as governments, I stress. So when we came together on the 7th of September of 2021, That was really historic. And at that gathering, the African and Caribbean heads of government made several decisions, several agreements as to things that we would do to build a real partnership between Africa and the Caribbean, between the African Union and CARICOM. And one of the decisions they made was that henceforth, every 7th of September would be recognized as Africa-Caricom Day, that we would celebrate that day both in the Caribbean and in Africa, and that in fact, we would hold annual follow-up summits on Africa-Caricom Day. Now, that hasn't happened. We haven't had any follow-up summits since the one in 2021, although we are working towards another follow-up summit, but obviously it won't be on the 7th of September. But however, we are celebrating Africa-Caricom Day. We are definitely celebrating it tomorrow in the Caribbean. We are hoping that it will be celebrated in several African countries as well. And in fact, one of the things we are hoping to achieve tomorrow is to have a signing of a virtual signing of a memorandum of understanding between the African Union and CARICOM. So I hope that, I know the CARICOM Secretariat and the African Union Commission have been working in the last few days to get ready for that. And I really hope that it happens tomorrow. But I can tell you, speaking for Barbados, that we in Barbados will definitely be celebrating Africa-Caricom Day tomorrow.
So help me to understand one thing, but first of all, I am happy and have a pleasure and honor to say that here at Connect Africa, as a Pan-African media platform, we celebrate with you. And that's why we are having this conversation on the eve of the Africa-Caricom Day. So now, when we say Africa-Caricom Day, and when that meeting was held on September 7 in 2021, is it Africa Union or just African states independently who came together with the Caribbean community? Shall we see it different with Africa and African Union, or it's the same?
Well, the summit was hosted by Kenya, by then President Uhuru Kenyatta. The African Union, the chairperson of the African Union Commission was present, participated. The chair of the African Union participated, but the title of the summit was not African Union CARICOM Summit, it was Africa CARICOM Summit. So my reading of that is that perhaps it had not gone through the formal process of getting a decision, a formal decision of the African Union. And perhaps that is why it was termed an Africa-CARICOM summit. That's my supposition. But in any event, all of the major players in the African Union were there. The African Union Commission was there. The chairperson of the African Union was there. So that's the best explanation I can give, Mahlet.
Okay, no, it's clear. Now, I understand that from as far as my reading is concerned, this day tomorrow will be celebrated with different cultural events. And another update that you gave us is also you're hopeful a virtual memorandum of understanding will be signed. We know that in the past, your Prime Minister Mia Motley, who's really one of the powerful leaders leaders, that Pan-African leaders we have currently, that we are witnessing in this generation. Yeah, really a pleasure to see her. Now she has been in Ghana, she has been in Rwanda, if I'm not mistaken, right? And there were different initiatives that were started. For example, having the Africa, which you said, the Afrexim Bank, the Africa Import-Export Bank. You tell us where it is going to be in Caribbean. Can you please tell us? But also, my question is actually, beside this, coming together, are there any practical things? We know, okay, the Afrexim Bank, and there was a talk of the Pan-African airlines that will, bring together, as I call them, these distant relatives together who are separated by water, the Caribbean and Africa, but also as we speak now, the African Climate Change Summit is being finalized. Do you also take part? What are the things between CARICOM and the African governments are being materialized or in the process?
Well, let me begin by saying that what those of us who are Pan-Africanists want is unity between Africa and the African diaspora, inclusive of the Caribbean region of the diaspora. And we believe that there's so much to be gained in unity, that we're going to make so much progress if we only come together and show solidarity with each other and assist each other and lend our strengths to each other and help, deal with whatever weaknesses we have collectively. So that is the grand vision that we are pursuing. And that is why it was so pleasing that we had that summit in 2021. Yes, some important things have materialized since 2021. You mentioned the African Export-Import Bank. That is one of the main concrete things that has materialized, because ever since that summit, the Africa Export-Import Bank has been in the Caribbean, helping. They have started to be part of our scene here in the Caribbean. I mean, they've been having meetings with our central bank governors. They have been working with our CARICOM Development Fund to develop new financial institutions to mobilize development capital. And on the 4th of August, they established their Caribbean headquarters right here in Barbados. And last year, in October, they partnered with the Barbados government to stage the Africa-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum. It was held in Barbados. It was a wonderful event. I mean, 1,200 business persons and officials came in from the continent of Africa. There was a charter flight, Ethiopian Airways charter flight, and we had a wonderful trade and investment forum. And this year, we're having the follow-up forum, and it's going to be held in Guyana on the 30th and 31st of October. So that is very, very pleasing. That's a very positive, concrete development. In addition, some CARICOM countries have been collaborating with some African countries. For example, Guyana and Barbados are collaborating with Rwanda in developing a pharmaceutical industry in the Caribbean. So we're going to work together. Rwanda has already some experience in pharmaceutical industry, and so they're going to be lending their expertise to Barbados and Guyana so that we can develop in the Caribbean a Caribbean pharmaceutical industry. Yes, you mentioned the flight. We have agreed that this must happen. In fact, one of the decisions that the heads took in September 2021 is that there must be a weekly air flights between Africa and the Caribbean. And we were hopeful that by the middle of this year, we would have had that flight in place. But the airline that was being focused on, we discovered that there were a lot of problems with that airline. And so that was scuttled. But when the Afri-Exim Bank was, the headquarters was launched in Barbados, it was said that before the end of this year, we expect to have that direct airline linkage in place. So things are happening, not as fast as we would like them to happen. I mean, for example, we said that we would have these follow-up summits, and we really do need these summits. We said that we would establish an African Union CARICOM commission, and we really do need such a commission because we need to be talking to each other. Look at the issues that you have on the African continent: civil war in Ethiopia, in Sudan, military coups in Niger and Gabon, etc., etc. Our heads of state and government should be able to sit with your African heads of state and government and bring our collective wisdom to bear on these difficult political issues. Similarly, in the Caribbean, we have the issue of Haiti. We have been struggling with it. How do we solve the crisis in Haiti? It would definitely be helpful if we had our African heads of state being able to sit with us and to help work out a solution to the crisis in Haiti. So we have everything to gain by coming together. And this is why people like me, I mean, I'm a long-standing Pan-Africanist. People like me are really pushing the Africa-Caricom Day because this is an opportunity to get the message out, you know, to get the message out to our governments, but also to our people that this is our agenda, and to let people know about the agenda. I mean, we settled on a very progressive and concrete agenda in 2021, but we have to make sure that we implement it. And celebrating Africa CARICOM Day can help us to keep that agenda in focus and to build, you know, some momentum behind its implementation.
Thank you, Ambassador, for that. As you said, of course, first and foremost, the ambition or the goal is for the unity between the two, that political unity. Regardless, I would like to say people always have connected, and African people always feel connected to the people in the Caribbean, and same way people in the Caribbean feel connected to their motherland, to Africa. Do you think that, you know, not ratifying, not having the sixth region as a member state in the African Union have somehow is a constraint for not having that unity, or to talk different issues, as you say, that your political wisdom or experience that you could have come, you would have brought together and to solve the issue? Do you think that is what are that is how do you say, is a problem? Not,
Well,
not being a member state.
We have to begin by giving the African Union credit for designating the diaspora as the sixth region of Africa, and for making some space within the ECOSOC, the Economic, Social, and Cultural Council, for representation from the diaspora. I mean, these are very progressive things that the African Union did. And but unfortunately, there has been a great delay, or maybe even a lethargy in having made those decisions, really implementing those decisions in a very effective way. So, for example, when you read out my bio, you would have read out that I have represented the diaspora on the African Union's ECOSOC.
Yeah.
And and I did so. Because we in the Caribbean, we had done what was necessary to establish a Caribbean Pan-African network that was functioning. But we were virtually the only region of the diaspora that had properly organized ourselves. And so for several years, the African Union ECOSOC simply asked us, the Caribbean Pan-African Network, look, why don't you all just sit on the ECOSOC and represent speak for the entire diaspora, you know? And so we did that. But of course, that is not really satisfactory. And it is difficult for me to say why it has taken so long to really implement the six region, because I was involved in this exercise from 2003. The African Union, CEDAW, had the technical workshop in Trinidad and Tobago in 2003 to work out the definitions of African diaspora and people of African descent in order to operationalize the six region idea. And we formed the Caribbean Pan-African Network in 2004. So we have been working on this for a long time. Some of the blame obviously has to go to the diaspora, because in several regions of the diaspora, there's been too much confusion, too much infighting, and several of the regions of the diaspora has really made it very difficult for the African Union to incorporate them, But this is why I put so much stock in the African Union CARICOM project, because unlike other areas of the diaspora, the Caribbean region is a region of predominantly Black or African nations, independent nations, and sovereign governments. So the Caribbean region is in a better position structurally to be able to engage with Africa, because we have governments. We have predominantly Black or African governments and heads of government, heads of state, who can talk or who can engage with their counterparts on the African continent. We have ministers of foreign affairs, ministers of education, ministers of tourism, you name it. So we are better organized to really be able to engage with Africa and the African Union and build a strong partnership. So I think Africa, the African Union, and CARICOM, we need really to be the spearhead of this unity between Africa and the entire diaspora.
Thank you, Ambassador, for that. Now, another burning issue when we talk of Caribbean is indeed an island or a state that comes to our mind is Haiti. Now, recently, Kenya have decided to play along with the proposal of the United Nations and have sent 1,000 police to Haiti, and this has not been welcomed by the people, by the Haitians. And the civil society organization recently have written a letter opposing this. Now, how this has been received by the African diaspora or CARICOM?
Now, you see, we have to be careful. I don't think we should just jump on a bandwagon and criticize or denounce Kenya, because Haiti is a member of CARICOM, and CARICOM has been trying for several years now to see how we could find a solution to the crisis in Haiti. And at some points during those years, CARICOM has spoken to Kenya, has spoken to countries like Rwanda, and has said to them, look, we think that African countries can play a role in helping us to solve this problem of Haiti. So I think we need to be conscious of that Kenya, when Kenya made the offer of sending 1,000 police officers to Haiti, a lot of people just assume that Kenya made that offer because of entreaties from the United States. That may not be so. They may have made that offer because of entreaties from CARICOM. However, the United States almost immediately projected itself as if it was the pilot of this whole initiative. And that is problematical because of the past history of the United States in Haiti. Many of the people and organizations in Haiti are very suspicious of anything to do with the United States and are hostile to any idea of the United States intervening in Haiti. So if the Kenyan offer either deliberately or inadvertently comes to be seen as part of an American initiative, yes, it is going to come under attack, and it is going to evoke a hostile reaction from many elements of the Haitian society. And I think that is exactly what is being played out now. So the truth be told, I think the key to solving the crisis in Haiti is for a national unity transition administration to be put in place in Haiti. And right now, CARICOM is trying to help that to happen. We established a group of eminent persons, 3 distinguished former CARICOM prime ministers. And right now, they're actually in Haiti right now. And their mission is to bring all of the Haitian stakeholders to the negotiating table. And the stakeholders include both the current governing administration plus the opposition entities, the civil society entities, to bring everybody to a negotiating table and hopefully to get them to compromise all around and to agree upon a national unity transition administration. Now, if you could accomplish that, and that national unity administration takes control of everything that is to follow, including maybe even welcoming Kenyan police officers. That would make a big difference. If it is seen as an independent initiative that has a green light from a national unity administration, that would be vastly different from something that many people are perceiving as an American initiative. But again, I stress, to be fair to Kenya, they may very well not be acting because of the Americans. They may very well be acting because CARICOM may have said to them, look, can you help?
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your view or clarifying that, Ambassador. Now, I want to take you, in July, there was this statement that came out from European Union regarding the issue of reparation. And when it comes to reparation, it's your Prime Minister Mia Motley, or in general, it is the CARICOM who is bringing it to the forefront and fighting that battle for the reparation to be paid. So in that statement, the European Union said that they are willing only up until to bring back those African diasporas who want to go back and start their life in their motherland, wherever it is in the continent, just to finance their way back to the continent, but the reparation is again it is put aside. So what is your view on this, or was there anything that is communicated from CARICOM to the European Union after that statement came out?
Well, I am not aware that the European Union has committed itself to supporting any program of repatriation. I somehow doubt it, you know. I hear what you say, but I would really need to see that statement in writing to believe that. But we are pursuing reparations, not against the European Union, but against all of those European countries that were involved in the genocide of the indigenous people of the Caribbean and in the enslavement of our African forefathers here in the Caribbean. And we have identified 10 European countries that were involved. And since 2013, this is 10 years now, we have launched this reparations claim against these countries. So we are convinced that it is only a matter of time. We have said to them, look, the history is clear. You committed crimes against humanity. You profited from those crimes. You damaged us. Our ancestors, generation after generation, they never got enjoy or to keep the fruits of their labor. You took all of the fruits of their labor. All of the fruits of their labor went to your families, your companies, your national governments. And the time has come when you have to come to the negotiating table, and we have to work out a package of compensation, of repair of the damage. So the European governments have been resisting this. Recently, a few months ago, the government of the Netherlands came public and admitted its guilt, admitted that it had been involved in crimes against humanity, and admitted that it had done damage African people and that damage persisted up to today. And they have given an indication that they recognize they have to make some form of compensation. So CARICOM is going to take up the Dutch government on this, because having apologized and admitted guilt, we now need to sit with the Dutch government and talk about reparations, compensation. In England, the English government has been refusing to apologize or to admit guilt. However, many English institutions and even families are ahead of their government, and they have come forward and they have admitted guilt and they have apologized and they have started to make reparations payments. I mean, probably the most important institution is the Anglican Church, the so-called Church of England. They apologized, they admitted guilt, and they have set up a £100 million investment fund that is to be deployed in Black and African communities that were damaged. So this is a project that is underway. We have a CARICOM Reparations Commission that is in charge of pursuing this reparations claim on behalf of CARICOM. We are reaching out to the African continent and the African Union to partner with us in reparations, because just as damage was done to us in the Caribbean, tremendous damage was done to the continent of Africa. And in February of this year, at the African Union's summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, a resolution was passed by the African Union, committing the African Union to pursuing reparations, and the African Union and to seeking to partner with CARICOM. So we are gradually coming together on this. And in fact, just a few weeks ago, there was an African Union ECOSOC reparations study tour to the Caribbean. They came to Barbados. Dozens of officials, ambassadors, and other officials from Africa, from the African Union countries. They came to Barbados, and we had a week of discussions about reparations and how we can partner in pursuing reparations, you know? So that is coming along. That is coming along.
Thank you, Ambassador, again for clarifying that. Just a quick question. In this fight, as I said, it's CARICOM mostly that's doing the fight of reparation and repatriation. Is Africa as an institution or as African Union or individual institutions in the continent joining you? I mean, you said, okay, there is ECOSOC you mentioned, but so far you have been working with it together. It's just recently after that inclusion of that statement in the last summit of the African Union, ECOSOC came forward.
No, well, after they passed the resolution in February, the process is that there's going to be a working group that will develop a concept paper outlining how the African Union should pursue the reparations campaign, and that concept paper will come before the African Union Summit in February 2024. And so the AU ECOSOC Reparations Study Tour was designed to help that process of preparing the concept paper that will go before the African heads of government in February next year. So by February next year, they should have a plan of action. They should have put together a plan of action. But for example, you know, we are going to help, we are going to be part of the discussion to help flesh out that plan of action. For example, it's expected that there's going to be a major conference on reparations in Ghana. It was supposed to be in October, but it seems as if it's going to be pushed back into November of this year. And CARICOM, we are going to be supporting that conference, and a lot of our people are going to be at that conference. So we are going to embrace all of the opportunities to speak with Africa about reparations and to help us all to work out a workable and powerful partnership. And we are planning as well, you know, in addition to the Ghana conference, which is an initiative of the government of Ghana, we are also proposing a special African Union CARICOM conference strictly on reparations, because we are convinced that we need Africa's partnership with us. We have also agreed that we have to do a lot more at the United Nations on reparations. We have to use the forum of the United Nations to take forward the reparations struggle. And we have agreed among ourselves that we need to do that in partnership with the African Union, because between the African Union and CARICOM, we actually have 68. We have 68 member states in the United Nations. So, you know, we are, between the two of us, we are about 1/3 of the membership of the United Nations. So we can really be a very powerful force within the United Nations. And then we could pull with us Latin American countries, some Asian countries. So we recognize that if CARICOM and the AU work together, we could actually use the United Nations to take forward the reparations struggle in a very significant way.
Thank you, Ambassador. I have one final question. I know the Ambassador would leave us just before 9 o'clock my time, or like we have, to be exact, 15 minutes. Kwame, you want to come in to ask a question? We have a couple of questions in the chat section, because I promised our viewers I'm going to forward their question to Ambassador Comissiong. Let me I don't want you to go before I ask this until I organize a question. So let's go back to where we started regarding the Africa-Caricom. What is your message to Pan-African civil society organizations in the continent in terms of their contribution, what roles they can play to bring these two distant relatives together?
Well, I want them to know, first of all, that they have brothers and sisters, they have family in the Caribbean. We are their family, and they need to be aware of that. And, you know, we have always had a great interest in our mother continent. You know, after slavery was abolished in the Caribbean between 1834 and 1838, many of our people attempted to repatriate to the continent of Africa. These were people just coming out of slavery with little or nothing, poor, dispossessed people, and they made all kinds of efforts. Finally, in 1865, close to 350 Black Barbadians, African Barbadians, managed to make their way to Liberia, you know, and so we have so many, and then we have the Rastafari community in the Caribbean that has always had as its goal repatriation. So we have African people in the Caribbean. Some wish to physically repatriate to Africa. Others don't necessarily want to physically repatriate, but they want to reestablish those cultural and psychological and familial linkages with the continent of Africa. And then we have always been strong together. So I go back again to that 5th Pan-African Congress in Manchester. That Congress brought together the leaders of the Caribbean and Africa, the trade union leaders, the leaders of the young liberation movements and political parties, and we saw the results. I mean, we saw what we produced when Nkrumah went back to Ghana and he led that struggle. And who did he make as his advisor on African affairs? George Padmore, a Caribbean man. Just imagine that. His advisor on African affairs was a Black man of the Caribbean, of Trinidad and Tobago, George Padmore. And in the Marcus Garvey, the UNIA, the Garvey movement, you know, we had that powerful movement in the 1920s and early 30s. Lincoln, 8 million Black people together. And it proved to be such a powerful movement in terms of lifting up the idea that Black is beautiful and Africa for the Africans, those at home and abroad, and Africa must be free of colonialism, etc., etc. So we know that when we come together, we are much stronger as a united force. And we in CARICOM, we are clear. Since we became independent in the 1960s and 70s, we have emphasized those traditional linkages with the old colonial powers, so Europe and North America. But we are evolving, and our thinking is evolving, and we have come more and more to recognize that our future lies with Africa, that we have to reach out our hands to the African continent. And so, yes, and so we want Africa to reach out its hands to us as well. And we could, if we come together across this Atlantic Ocean, um, the Caribbean would be like a vanguard territory for the African continent in this Western hemisphere, you know? And so we're thinking now of global Africa, where Africa becomes so powerful because it's not just the continent, but it's all of the territories of the Caribbean and other parts of the diaspora, and it's the hundreds of millions of Black or African people who live in not just the Caribbean, but in Brazil and Colombia and Central America, United States, Canada, etc. You know, so it is up to us to use Africa-Caricom Day um, to help us with that mission of just spreading this notion of Pan-Africanism. If we know that there are many things that we need to do, but if on one day of every year, all of us make a very special effort just to celebrate Africa-Caribbean unity and just to remind ourselves of the agenda, the partnership agenda that we set for ourselves, and remind ourselves, look, yeah, if we have failed to implement some of these things, we remind ourselves that that is an agenda that is still to be done. And we say to our governments, look, on this day, we are reminding you that these are things that you promised to do and that you must do. You know, I think that's how we should use the day.
Thank you, Ambassador. Indeed, well said. We're going to do that as well. I will have a message for our viewers here as well. Let me bring Kwame in, since he said he has a burning question for you. Welcome, Kwame. We cannot hear you.
Muted. He seems. Oh, I thought maybe he's stuck.
Hello, Mahlet, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Mahlet?
We do hear you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Greetings, Ambassador. Sorry, with my network and microphone, I was trying to figure it out. Ambassador, I've been following you. We are glad that you are on this platform. We are happy to have you. We are always here and talking about issues of African people. It's unfortunate that I have a couple of questions, but you don't have a lot of time, so I'll make it very short. We have seen, of course, the instability that has been going on, across the African continent, and of course, we know, the reasons why all these things are happening, the economic issues, and the fact that the continent has not been able to lift itself up as fast as expected since the last 60 years of independence. So there seems to be some sort of polarization, which is evident within the leadership. It looks as if, in some way, the youth, especially in the continent, the next generation, which is coming into leadership, or our generation, feel like things are not moving as fast as we want them. So we feel like there's stagnation, some sort of, and we want things to be faster. Do you feel that the current pace which we have with, for example, the Black leadership, especially, because we see that there's this over reliance on the institutions, the Bretton Woods institutions. Today, I was listening to President Isaias of Eritrea, and he was telling the leaders that you should not rely on these institutions. Because they were talking about at the Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi, which ended today. They were talking about how they are trying to reform the institutions, the Bretton Woods institutions, and he said that you should mobilize the resources internally. Then the external investments will find you when you are already moving. But the idea of, banking everything on the external institutions, it doesn't work. It puts us in a trap. So I feel that there's somewhat within the Black leadership, even in the Caribbean, the African continent and the Caribbean, there's somewhat that reliance and the feeling that if we integrate ourselves with these institutions and reform them, then we'll get some sort of, some sort of redemption, so that we can be able to reconstruct Africa and probably reconstruct the Caribbean from, of course, the devastation, colonialism, and all those evils, slavery, and of course even the neo-colonialism that is going on right now that people are resisting against in Niger and all these countries. Do you feel that the leaders are doing enough, that this approach which is being taken right now, both in the African continent by the Black leadership on the African continent and in the Caribbean, whether you're talking about Jamaica, whether you're talking about Barbados, and all these countries, do you feel that the leaders are doing enough and the youth should continue to be patient, or do you side with the youth who feel that this approach is not working for us and we need to take a new approach? And is this polarization, which is actually on the African continent, the same which is there in the Caribbean, in the Black world especially?
No, we have to do both things. We have to restructure the international financial institutions. We have to restructure the whole international economic and political order. In fact, that is an intrinsic part of the reparations struggle. So we can't just say that, oh, just leave these institutions. No, no, no. First of all, they're too powerful. A lot of their wealth is really the result of the exploitation and looting and plundering of African people. So part of the reparations struggle is to significantly restructure them, so that we take up our rightful place within them. We get our rightful share of the resources. They respect the fact that we now have a right to development, and they're under a fundamental duty to support that development. But at the same time, even while we are doing that, we have to mobilize our own resources. So, for example, you have the African Export-Import Bank. That bank is now in the Caribbean. We have recognized that we have something like over 50 billion US dollars in savings of the citizens of the Caribbean, virtually lying dormant in bank accounts, earning virtually no interest. So we are now working on how can we create new financial instruments that we could mobilize our own resources, our own capital, finance national development. So we have to do both things. We have to do both things. In terms of Africa, we can't have any generation gap. We can't have the youth here and the elders in a different space. We have to bridge those. We have to bridge those gaps. We must have one national agenda, and it must be a progressive agenda that is creating a bright future for our young people. We have to solve the problem of governance, of democratic governance. We have to have democratic systems of people rule, people empowerment, proper elections. This is one of the areas in which perhaps we in the Caribbean have a greater strength that we could help to share with our African brothers and sisters, because we have developed a tradition of democratic electoral politics where we have free and fair elections, we change governments regularly through elections, etc. And so if we can establish the partnership, we can share our strengths with each other. We also need peace, because you're not going to have development, national development, if the society is bound up in conflict and civil war. And you need peace in order to have development. We have this concept in the Caribbean that we have been pushing since the early 1980s, that the Caribbean must be a zone of peace. And we have been saying this to everybody, whether it's the Americans, whoever, the Caribbean must be a zone of peace. When they were targeting Venezuela, we said to them, we want no military intervention in Venezuela. Our Caribbean must be a zone of peace. There must be a peaceful settlement of disputes. There must be respect for national sovereignty, territorial integrity of states, etc., etc. So, for example, when Africa is now grappling with these situations of military coup and instability, I think that if the CARICOM leaders had an opportunity to sit with their African counterparts and discuss, they would probably be counseling, look, you must have a diplomacy of peace. You must try to establish your region as a zone of peace, where you must have peaceful settlement of disputes, etc. So that is why I put so much stock in us coming together, because there are strengths that we all have. So we could share our strengths with each other, and we could come together in solidarity to look at the difficult problems, the deficiencies that we have, and see how we could tackle them in a sensible and rational way. But unfortunately, I think I've run out of time, because I have to go and chair a meeting of the Caribbean Pan-African Network. This is the network that we set up in the Caribbean to engage with the African Union and with the African continent. It's been in existence now since 2004, and it is still going strong. So I have to go, and I'm the chair of the network.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It's always a pleasure to have you here. We really benefit out of your insightful explanation and sharing your view, your experience in the Pan-Africanism journey for the past decades. So thank you very much, and also for fitting in this time. Yeah, so I will take the question since I promised, and I will forward you. There are like 2-3 questions, and I'm going to come back and present it to them on our next live stream session. So I'm sorry about that, but we have to let the ambassador go. Before he go, I would like to say, everyone, please use your platform and reach out for any, a Caribbean brother or sister that or just put it on your social media to show that you are celebrating with your brothers and sisters Africa-Caricom Day. That's a message that we get across from here. Thank you, Ambassador. You.
So it's always a pleasure, Mahlet. It's always such a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Thank you.
Thank
you. All right. Bye. Yeah. So hi everyone. We lost Kwame too. Kwame have another program that he has to go, but he did ask the question. I'm going to take your questions and forward it to him, and then bring the answer to you. It was Osie and Get Black with me. Also, you have a question, I think, in the beginning, I see, unless it's answered here. We will see you again on the next one. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, like, and share, and go out and put on your social media, happy Africa-Caricom Day. Reach out to, if you are in the Caribbean or an African diaspora, reach out to your people to Africa or in the Caribbean. Shows that you are commemorating the day. At least once in a year, we need to be connected, right? So this gives us a very good opportunity to do that. Thank you all. Easy D, Mikey Simba, Osie, Get Black with me, story time. Hello, welcome. Kwame was here, I think now gone. Leo, Reno, Ekan Frey, Yeah, all of you, thank you for being here. We will see you again, myself and Kwame, from here on the live stream, analyzing burning issues in the continent. But we will drop also other videos in between. Thank you and have a good evening. Bye-bye.